Hello, very good evening. Warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, and welcome back to South Africa, at least for me. After 4 weeks, 8 shows on the road across Greece, I can tell you wholeheartedly it is very, very nice to be back. I had a fantastic time, and if you missed any of those shows, try and catch one or two of them. We had some fascinating conversations with Greek winemakers over the 8 shows we had across Greece, not just about the wines that they're making, but how those wines, how those varietals might speak to the future of South African wine. And in fact, the last show we had last Thursday from the Innocent Wine Bar in the heart of Athens, beautiful spot with a great selection of wine, and not just Greek, as well as a top Greek winemaker in the form of Yannis Valambos from Vasaltis in Santorini. We also had a couple of South Africans who've got a little bit of experience in Greek wine. Gary Jordan's been going to Greece for about 40 years now. There's also the Molyneux, and both they and the Jordans are planting Assyrtiko, and in the form of the Molyneux, they have actually released their first one. And then Ian Nodir, who spends most summers in Paros, has drunk plenty of Greek wine and is in fact the man bringing the Vasiltis Assyrtiko into South Africa. So that was one of a series of illuminating conversations. But being home, being back in the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar, being surrounded by great South African wine makes it a very, very happy return. And it's almost a very happy show this evening, because we'll be celebrating a new appointment in the Graham Beck empire as the premium South African Bubbles line continues to broach new frontiers around the world. And we've got somebody else broaching a new frontier, and that's the only slight tinge of sadness on the show today. We'll be celebrating the South African achievements of a great local winemaker, but also bidding her farewell, because I'm afraid we've lost her. I'm not sure for how long, to America, but it's a wonderful opportunity for a great South African wine producer, and it's only going to further enhance our international reputation, I have no doubt. So who are our two guests? Well, we'll find out in just a moment. First up, though, some recent wine news. Well, this is the big breaking news. Tomorrow from 2:30 until 3:30, a very special broadcast. Normally we're live on Mondays and Thursdays, but tomorrow from 2:30 till 3:30, I'll be joining Tim Atkin at Strauss's headquarters ahead of the Johannesburg tasting of the Strauss 95 points and better, where Tim will be talking me through his love of South Africa, how he first fell for this country and in particular its wines, how he puts together the astonishing report that he does. It is bigger than ever this year, and how the wines he tasted reflect on the current state of South African wine. It promises to be a fascinating conversation, and it promises to have some great fashion, because Tim's got a wonderful collection of shirts. So look out for me and Tim on the usual channels live at 2:30 tomorrow. Tim Atkin live in conversation. Then later on this week, I will be in Cape Town on Thursday evening. This is an exclusive screening of Blind Ambition for Pick and Pay Wine Club members. I will be co-hosting that with Joseph Dafana, Tongai Joseph Dafana. He is on the left of the four gentlemen in picture, the quartet of Zimbabweans who came south over the Limpopo with not a shred of wine knowledge between them, and have gone on to become outstanding sommeliers whose story is chronicled in Blind Ambition, which is, as many people have said, the cool runnings of wine. It screens at the V&A Waterfront on Thursday, and then at Mall of Africa on Friday, Ster-Kinekor in both cases. And I think tickets have just about sold out. If you get over to Web Tickets in time, you might just grab yourself a ticket and see not just the movie, but myself and Tongai Joseph Dafana, whose wines are now in Pick and Pay, in conversation. Thursday, Cape Town. Friday, Joburg. Look forward to seeing you there. And then back to Cape Town on the 15th of October. This time, I'm teaming up with Roland Peens for the Bordeaux Charity Dinner. It is an exceptional evening out. It is not an inexpensive evening out. 35,000 Rand for dinner with Dan and Roland. Well, I'd suggest that's cheap at the price, but it's not really Dan and Roland. It is the wine that you will be drinking, and it is a remarkable selection from pretty much all of the big Bordeaux guns and all of the great vintages. You're going to be at Aubergine, where the famous Harold Bresserschmidt will be taking care of dinner, and all of the money raised will be going to charity, which is, needless to say, extremely important. The charity in question is called Spiel, and it helps with childhood development in the winelands. And you are going to be drinking wine that includes the 05 Petrus and Angelus, the 2000 Ausson and Pavie, some Margaux from 96, Haut-Brion 89, and Le Pen, all the way down to La Mission Haut-Brion 1959, and a whole pile from Cheval Blanc, Lafite, Latour, and others in between. That is the 15th of October. It is going to be down in Cape Town at Aubergine. There are only 30 tickets available. Most of them have sold. If you'd like to come along, drop Roland an email, and we look forward to seeing you there. Great wine for a very, very good cause. And I can also tell you, end of the year, I bumped into Nicky van der Walt over lunch today at Tang, his restaurant in Santon, and his new Cape Town shop will be up and running before the end of the year. It's proved a smash hit in Johannesburg with its Asian fusion range. Think Hakkasan for a South African market, and that's going to be opening down at the V&A waterfront in a couple of months' time. We'll give you more details closer to that launch. Right, let's jump into our guests today. One of them is the brand new CEO of Graham Beck, coming not from a wine background, but from an alcohol background, with an empire to take charge over, and the other Elgin Vintners to say goodbye and make her way over to America. So let's say hello to Dr. Marinda Kruger, who is leaving Elgin Vintners, and then David Burford, who has taken over at Graham Beck. Welcome, lovely to have you here. And first of all, Marinda, congratulations, because as tearful as South Africa was when we heard the news that you were going to be leaving, it sounds like an amazing opportunity. Tell us where you're going and how this opportunity came about.
I'm leaving at the end of September for Napa in the US. How this opportunity arose is always a combination of circumstances. I think it's also being at the right place at the right time and things just working out in a very coordinated way. But I was contacted by somebody that headhunted for this company. And obviously they've seen my profile on various, on LinkedIn, I was told by one, and also scouting the South African wine industry, but also, of course, the global wine industry, because this company has come to a point where they really needed some special attributes that the next head winemaker could add to their company. And yes, it's been a long conversation with them. I have been talking with them since towards the mid-January already, and keeping the conversations going. And yes, it ended up me being offered the position.
You're being very cloak and dagger with us here, Marinda. This company, that company, they got hold of me. I've been trying to work it out. Are you taking over Robert Mondavi? Are you the new one boss? Can you tell us where you are going, Marinda?
Yes, I can. It is. It's not a very well-known winery because it's actually still very young. It's a startup company. It's 5 years old, but it's progressed phenomenally in 5 years. The umbrella company is known as Penrose Hill Winery, and they're also trading as First Leaf, which is a subscription arm of this company that does extremely well. So it's a very consumer-orientated wine company, listening to what the consumer wants and giving absolutely just that. They've been rated as the 30th largest wine company in America, and also rated by Fast Company as one of the top 10 most innovative companies in America. So that's not just wine, that's tech companies, because they do make use of artificial intelligence, data science, to do customer profiling, wine blending, and all those kind of things. So very exciting, very new, using a lot of resources and data to drive this company forward. And as I say, they've grown phenomenally well, being the 30th largest wine company in America at the moment.
It sounds like it is an extraordinary opportunity. I've got no doubt it's one that didn't come along and a day later you'd made your decision. How hard was it to decide to say goodbye to the space in Elgin that you've made your own and done so well at, and decide that this was the opportunity you couldn't afford to say no to?
Yeah, it was very hard, Dan. It wasn't something that was taken instantaneously, the decision. The company did interest me from the start. I have a PhD in enology, wine research. I love it, but I am a practical winemaker as well, and that's exactly what they were looking for, is somebody with a strong research arm, but very, very much on the global winemaking front, which I was very fortunate to have from my experience being with Boutino, my previous company. For Elgin, it was very hard to say goodbye to Elgin Vintners and realize that I've come to the end of my road with this company, because Elgin Vintners has also grown so much in the past 5 years. It's phenomenal grapes. It's amazing people. It is a fantastic brand to work with. I see a very promising future for the brand going forward. Everything just came together in my conversations with the people from Penrose Hill Winery. Me and Donnie, my husband, sat around and said, listen, if this is what they're going to offer, we cannot say no. So the offer was extremely good. And being at the forefront of innovation in the wine industry, I see as a privilege now. Data science is very much on the forefront of a lot of people's minds, using that to drive business, and not just drive business, of course, from financial point of view, but use other resources that has never been used. I've always said that wineries sit with so much data that they can use, but for some reason they don't. And here is this company that actually just do that. And if you see the growth they've had in 5 years as a startup winery and where they are now, and they import wine as well from many countries all over the world, not just making wine from Napa and Sonoma. It is actually quite a phenomenal story in itself.
And it's about to get the most wonderful new chapter as a top-class South African import arrives on the doorstep. I want to find out a bit more about the future, but also about the legacy you leave behind in Elgin. Before I do that, though, you have got a new job beckoning. Our other guest has got a new job that's fairly recently started. Dave, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on. Before we get into your story of how you found yourself on the Graham Beck property, you've been there a little while now. Are you finding your feet, and what has the introduction firsthand to the world of premium bubbles been like for you?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. That's it's an absolute pleasure to be on the show, and thank you very much for having me. Yeah, it's been 2 months now, so I'm still very sort of wet behind the ears, and feet are still sort of sliding under the table, so to speak. But the welcome that I've received into the industry, and particularly into the Graham Beck family, has been phenomenal. I think there's so much opportunity in this space. It's really an exciting space to move into, not just for Graham Beck and for Steenberg Vineyards, but also for the category at large. And I think as we move forward and we see the growth of the South African brands in the rest of the world, and into the US and Europe particularly, we're seeing some exciting trends. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and very exciting space.
You are moving into the bubble space from a slightly different background. Marinda's moving from wine to wine. You were with Heineken, looking after a range of different brands. I'll ask you a similar question to the one I asked Marinda. How much did you have to consider this move in your case, given that it is a slightly different world?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I don't think there was a lot of consideration. I think there were a lot of conversations with particularly the Beck family with Anthony, the owner, around his aspirations for the business and where he saw the business moving. But it's been a space that, although I haven't worked in directly, when you work in other adjacent categories such as beer and spirits, having worked with both Diageo in the past and Heineken amongst a couple of other brewers, they very much look at the full landscape. So they look at all adjacent categories, including wine, and in particular looking at the bubbles category, which seems to go from strength to strength. Really, it's been a category that's been through some interesting changes, and coming out the other side of the COVID pandemic, we've seen quite a lot of growth in this category, and not just locally but across the globe. So the timing was perfect. The opportunity was exactly in line with my aspirations, and it all came together really in a way that it was a no-brainer. The move was just the right opportunity at the right time with the right business.
I remember listening to an international wine speaker at an event. This is probably 15 years ago, so I could barely have been out of school, talking about how what South Africa was really missing was that big driving international wine brand, much like, say, Australia has a Penfolds, which can lift up everything around it and really drive South Africa into premium markets around the world, but at scale. I think Graham Beck has been doing that to a degree. Was an element of you moving into this space part of seeing that sort of potential to take not just Graham Beck, but the Steenberg and Capensis brands, and possibly, who knows, maybe one or two others down the road, and create this combined space that not just in its own right is having a more global impact, but is helping to lift up other South African brands along the way?
Yeah, Dan, I think that's a really good point. I think there's been challenges for us penetrating into the global markets, where there's been some legacy around quality and consistency issues. But I think there's a couple of the larger brands that have really broken down some of those barriers. And Graham Beck's done a fantastic job of establishing South African wine, and with consistency and with quality. And, we'd hope slightly higher price points. And I think that's one of the challenges we face, is that South African wine generally is undervalued in some of these markets. But definitely the strategy is to continue to grow, and particularly to venture into that premium space, and to escalate not just the brands, but the whole of the South African wine category within some of these key markets. So I think absolutely, I think myself and other leading brands within the South African wine space really need to collaborate and work better together at driving brand SA wine.
And you've got a lot of collateral to work with in doing that, because you start with huge brand equity in Graham Beck in particular, headlined by the bespectacled bubbles maker, who I think is on a midlife crisis world tour of America at the moment, in the work that Peter has done in building up the Graham Beck story, building on the Madiba and the Barack Obama stories. You've got such a cool story to work with, and it's the kind of story that I think needs to be shared more. If you couple that with the sheer quality of wine you're making, and the broader space that is Cup Classique in South Africa at the moment, it seems to me that is super, super exciting when you look at it through slightly more business-oriented eyes rather than my rose-tinted romantic ones. Are you seeing something similar? Is this a horizon, a future for Bubbles General, but Graham Beck in particular, that does look really exciting and positive?
No, absolutely, Dad. I mean, you sort of just pretty much nailed my elevator speech to a lot of our distribution partners that we talked to around the world around how we expand the Graham Beck portfolio, and particularly focus into that more premium space where we have the quality, we have the consistency, and there's a lot of really strong South African brands that I think we can, again, as I said, collaborate to drive that penetration into those markets. Generally, the category is doing well. We are seeing bubbles as a bigger category. Peter Ferreira has done a fantastic job being our ambassador in a lot of those markets, and he's a face that's synonymous with Cup de Classique, and is really doing a fantastic job of opening those doors and giving us that face in the market that we really need to grow and to build the brands. I'm the guy behind the scenes, right? I'm just the guy that enables people like Peter and the rest of our specialists and our winemakers to be able to actually get their story across in the right and most efficient way. So So for sure, there's an opportunity there, and we see that to be a continuing trend. We don't see that as being a short-term tick. So we are really gearing our business around making the most of those opportunities, both locally and internationally.
As I said, you do have great brand equity, and that's been built up over many years, as we've seen numerous times on this show. There's also a lot of brand equity built up in Elgin Vintners. Going back to you, Marinda, as you say goodbye, and I know it's going to be a very, very emotional end of the month. When we look back, we've had you on the show before talking about some of your successes, I think most recently with some Sauvignon Blanc, amongst many, many others. What would you say for you are the great triumphs, the moments you look back on with most fondness for your time in Elgin?
There are many that I can think of, Dan. I think if I look back, I'm very satisfied that I leave focused brands. We've managed to do some rebranding of the Elgin Vintners brand, in the sense of the artwork, making it a little bit more modern. I've established the Cloud Haven range, which is sort of our first release of a vintage wines. And then we've recently done the new site-specific range. So very much satisfied that we've got the brands and where it belongs into each market now, in each corner. So that to me is very satisfying. Broadening the export market is extremely satisfying and was so much needed. And also, putting a value to your brand, to the price point, which Dave mentioned as well just now, which is also very important in the local market and in the export market. But also thinking of fondness of the team that we've managed to build in my time with Elgin Vintners. Dedicated, amazing people that love what they do, from my cellar assistant to the warehousing staff to the hospitality, which is the tasting room and the guest house. Our lady that does the logistics, everybody, I can truly say, love what they do. They love the brand, and we have a team spirit, working towards a goal of just championing this Elgin Vintners brand as a whole. And of course, James, Rawbone Viljoen and Max Hahn and Neil Reed, all the other people behind the scenes that make Elgin Vintners possible. Really fantastic people that's made an imprint on my life as business people, but has become friends as well, and working with integrity and honesty and all those beautiful things, that one would want in a business environment, we have at Elgin Vintners. So very much leaving a satisfying, secure, lovely space to work in, going into the unknown, which is quite scary, but also, elevating the brand throughout the 4.5 to 5 years I was with Elgin Vintners was an interesting journey for me as well. So yes, so as you can say, there are quite many.
What about the impact that you feel you've had on Elgin, and in turn the growth of Elgin? I know you haven't been there for a huge amount of time, but I've definitely seen a change in Elgin in terms of people understanding more about Elgin, where it is, what kind of wine it makes. It's not a big appellation, but we're seeing more and more top-class, world-class wines come out of Elgin. As you look back over your time, have you also seen that change? And where does that rank on the moments that make you smile?
I think if you ask James, Rawbone Viljoen, he'll tell you that Marinda has put systems in place, because I do think it doesn't matter how romantic or how colorful you color in a business. If you don't have systems in place, your business will fail. So I think I'm from financial systems to winemaking systems to sales systems, really worked hard with all the different people in the departments to get a good system in place. With Elgin Valley, I've bought grapes in the Elgin Valley 10, 12 years ago, and I've always really just liked the area and just thought it's such an understated area. And being part of Elgin Valley now, and the producers that are there, which are all fantastic producers and all really want to push this valley so that people globally and locally can know the gem that we have here in the South African wine industry is that it is really unique in the sense that it is the coolest wine growing area in South Africa. It has phenomenal attributes, like it has a wide range of diurnal temperature, which means that the temperature between day and night is quite wide, and that's phenomenal for grape quality. So you start off already with fantastic grapes. And if you have a winemaker and a team that understands that impact that will have on wine quality, you cannot not make a good wine. And then, of course, it's your job to go and tell the story about your property, about the people, and get and sell the wine, which is, of course, very hard work. We know how hard work that is. I actually thought today when I was driving in the car, winemaking is actually the easy part. Selling is the most difficult part, and not just selling the wine at a certain price point, but getting your story out there, the investment you need to make for people to know your story. And that's what we did at Elgin Vintners. We made a huge investment over the 4.5 to 5 years to get our story out there, to tell our story. And it's amazing to see the response and the people recognizing now the brand, because that's what you want. You want people now recognizing the brand.
I think we just lost Marinda there for a second. We'll come back to her in a moment. She does make a really important point, though, that as well as you might make wine, you've still got to sell it. And that's where it falls on the shoulders of Dave with his new job. It's all well and good to send Bubbles scurrying up and down the United States, giving tastings and posting away on Instagram, and he does a terrific job. But it's a very small way of selling the story. How do you scale that up? How do you take a brand like Graham Beck or the associated brands, Steenberg, Carinas, and particularly like a market in America, which is so fragmented and so notoriously difficult to work in, and be able to take these brands up a level in terms of the scale and into more restaurants, into more stores, into more homes?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the challenge that most people within the wine category face. It's, I think the quality is there, the products are there, the brands are there, but as Marinda said, it's really about getting your story out there and really about making sure that you build the brand in those respective markets. And what works locally doesn't always work in other markets. You have to put a slightly different story out there that's more relevant to the consumers in that space. I mean, for example, in the US, it's very much a rosé-led market, very different to the likes of the UK, Europe, and even South Africa. So your focus and your understanding of the local market is imperative. Getting a strong PR agency that understands who the influencers are, understands which are the right people to get your wines in front of, to make sure that you're getting that penetration and people are genuinely getting to experience your brands and understand the story, is an investment that you have to make behind the brand growth, in ensuring that your go-to-market and your route to market is established. And as you said, America particularly, it's fragmented. It's dealing with each state as a different entity, almost as a separate country. And you have to have local boots on the ground that understand the nuances and what is the most efficient way to be able to break into those different states and those different markets. So that's part of our expansion strategy. We do have a sister business that is set up in the US that is very focused on driving into those respective states and making sure that we understand that route to market so that we can get the right story to the right people to get our brands in front of our consumers. And it's an uphill struggle. It's not easy, and it's all about getting boots on the ground and pounding the pavement. There's no shortcuts. You've got to go to those restaurants. You've got to speak to those owners. You've got to sample your wines. You've got to taste your wines. You've got to have the likes of Peter Ferreira, Mr. Bubbles out there on Instagram, Ilunda Basson, our winemaker here at Steenberg. And they've got to become part of the local wine scene and be understood and get to tell our story. So, and I'd love to say that there's a secret formula and there's a shortcut. I think the reality, and particularly for anyone that's tried to penetrate these markets, is there's no such thing. It is just down to sheer hard work.
What about the telling of that South African story? You referenced Ilunda, who is doing such a terrific job at Steenberg, which is in a very different part of the world to Robertson. Are we far enough down the road, do you think, in terms of international consumers, from what you've seen in your admittedly brief tenure so far, where instead of just telling a South African wine story, we're able to tell a Constantia wine story versus a Robertson wine story versus a Stellenbosch wine story, and do so in a way that is not confusing people out there, but they're starting to understand that this is to South Africa what a Bordeaux is versus a Rhone versus a Burgundy?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think there's a lot of category work to be done around SA wine. We need to be very clear ourselves as to how we collaborate and how we tell those stories. I mean, Cape Wine coming up obviously next month is a great platform for us to get together as an industry and start telling those stories to our international distributors and make sure that we can communicate what the differences between the regions are, what makes one wine different from another and how they complement each other. So, it's not just a challenge on the international scene. I think it's a challenge locally too. I don't think there's ever been a real category leadership position in SA wine. If you walk into a supermarket, for example, it's really quite difficult to distinguish one brand, one variant from another. And if you look at adjacent categories, if you look at some of the spirit categories, for example, and how they've managed to tell their story and segment their category, make it more shopper and consumer friendly, I think there's a lot of lessons there for us to learn as an industry and how we can get a little bit better at how we communicate to our consumers and how we can communicate to our customers. So it's an exciting space, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And definitely from a Graham Beck perspective, we need to take a leadership stance in the bubbles category, and then with Steenberg and the Constantia wines, we need to be very clear on what we stand for and what makes it different from the rest. So absolutely, there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of challenges, but ones that actually keep me awake with excitement, thinking about all the great things that we can do.
You do seem to have a fairly good handle on what lies ahead. Lots of challenges to be met, but the enthusiasm is very clearly there. You also have a bit of a challenge, Dave, in that you've now got a South African adding to some competition, because South African wine in America is now going to be competing with Marinda's new wines over the next little while. But what about making those wines, Marinda? Because where you come from, Elgin now, lots of great Pinot Noir, lots of Chardonnay, your Sauvignon Blanc is terrific, lots of wines that thrive in cool climates. You're now heading over to Napa, where it's absolutely roaring with heat at the moment, and you're going to be making wine in a part of the world where big Cabernet Sauvignons and big Chardonnays of a different style to Elgin are very much to the fore. How much does that change your approach to what you're going to do? And is that super exciting, a bit nerve-wracking, or maybe a bit of both?
It's definitely nerve-wracking. I'm going to end up going full on in the midst of harvest. I'm heading the winemaking team, so I think this year I will observe only the harvest before trying to introduce any changes. I'm not going there being Mrs. Know-all, at the least not. But I do think from a South African perspective, I can add definitely to the American wine scene. Very excited. I'm going to work with a huge majority of the known cultivars: Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, of course. So very excited, wide range that the company does have. Willing always to learn. Of course, yes, but it is a bit nerve-wracking, but I'm going there full of faith that I have this wonderful South African background of our wine industry. And, our wine industry is hard in that sense, because you have to be so good to really be at the top. We are an industry that can be very proud of the systems we have in place for certification. The competitions here are tough. So if you do well on these fronts, then I'm sure you'll do well in a different country as well, because I'm just taking the same standards, high standards, to the US. So yes, I think I can add definitely as a South African winemaker, and very, very excited to do just that.
I think that's a really good point to make. We'll be discussing exactly those high standards tomorrow on the special edition of the show with Tim Atkin from 2:30 till 3:30 live from Strauss, talking about his 2022 South Africa report. You are not without experience beyond Elgin, and it's not just South African experience, of course, Marinda. You've spent time in Australia, you've spent time in Europe. How important is that collective international experience going to be? And what for you is the biggest challenge? What's the one that's got you most, if not worried, then thinking, I'm really going to have to be on my game to get this one right?
I think international experience is very important. I think it's important actually for every winemaker these days, because we are playing on a global front. We are not playing only on a domestic front. I was very fortunate since my winemaking days that I had the opportunity to travel to various countries. And also seeing the impact of what your fantastic wine you think have on a table with other international wines, then you realize how on top of your game you must be, and how on top of the story that you tell, and not tell the same story as everybody else, but be authentic, of course. Something that I'm really looking forward to is that one of the main aim is not just heading the winemaking team, but also bringing the data science team and the winemaking team together and working in conjunction with the marketing side of that, so that we can do proper customer profiling of the different wines on a data science level, which is taking it really to a different level altogether. So for me, that will be the first time I'll have the opportunity to do that and be part of that team, doing also research projects that will elevate us in predicting the correct or nearest correct blends that customers would want to buy or would like or is in their preferences. So for me, I'm excited about that. A little bit nervous. It will be my first time I've had experience from it. I did a little bit of that in my PhD. Because I thought that would be that's when you profile wine, not just on a chemistry level, but also on a consumer profile together with the aromatics, and putting that all together, because I think that's the thing. Just as much as our wine industry is fragmented in a certain way, research is also fragmented. It's as if we're struggling to get all the different components from viticulture to winemaking to customer profiling together in a harmonious way, so that you can do something with that information. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
You're not the only one looking forward to it. Amongst our people watching around the world, Mark Ratcliffe is involved in the Wachgelegen business in America. Marinda, welcome to the USA, and it's awesome to see South African experience hitting the shores here. Have no doubt you will make a great impact. Mark, Zimbabwean born and studied down at Rhodes, I think, but now pretty much running New York and having some fun with wine in between. So lots of people excited to see you in a market that's full of some really interesting, exciting wine. Am I correct, David, saying that you guys have a wine operation of sorts in Oregon?
Yeah, that's correct. So the family owns two wineries in Oregon. So we have Angela and we have Abbott's Claim, and that's part of the portfolio that's being managed by the sister organization over in the US. But we get a lot of insight from that business in terms of how they interact with the consumers and profile, and how they look at the US market. So it's definitely advantageous having an organization in a separate setup over in the US. It was very interesting actually hear Marinda talking about data science and the use of data science. I think that's absolutely the start of the journey here at Beck Family Estates, has been deep diving into the data that we do have available, and how we can better utilize that to map our customer base and our consumer base. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, not just for this business, but across the industry, to get to better understand how we segment our customers, and definitely how we can better target our consumers, not just internationally, but again here locally. I think there's a big job of work for us to do to build the brand SA Wine, not just overseas, but here locally too, particularly in the bubbles category. We see the French champagnes taking pride and place in a lot of the liquor stores over here, and on the menus in a lot of the restaurants. And the reality is we have local brands that have the quality and definitely command a place on that wine list. And I think we need to, we really need to make sure that we're batting up against those guys. And the blind taste tests that I've been involved in and had the pleasure to be involved in, we always, and it's not just the Graham Beck brands, but the South African brands in general come out top three every single time. So, I think we also need to focus on our local market as well as expanding into the USA, into other international markets.
I think if anyone had any doubts about your commitment to getting stuck into a new side of the alcohol business, you've dispelled them very firmly. I want to make sure, though, Dave, that it hasn't just been all work. You did allude to a little wine tasting there. Have you been sneaking in some fun with the different estates and different brands? And what's it been like immersing yourself in wine away from just flat out work?
Yeah, I mean, anyone that says this isn't a fun category to work in has never worked in it, right? So you can't come into a category such as this and not be just absolutely awestruck by the level of skill and the expertise and the artistry that goes into making a high quality wine. And of course, that all comes together in a tasting event where you sit with the winemaker that is, and the passion is there, and the story behind how he arrived at that particular blend and that particular wine. It's really just opened my mind up to the world of wine. It's a category I've always had an affinity for. I've always been a wine drinker at home. I know what I like, I know what I don't like, but now I know why, and I know the story behind it. So absolutely, it is. I can't see myself working in any other categories. I've had the pleasure of working across the broader category, both in the beer side and obviously on the spirit side. But absolutely, this is the wine side of it is something that I feel very privileged to be involved in, and it's something that I can see myself being involved in for a long time to come. There's so much to learn. At the moment, I'm just a sponge sitting in that room. Just really soaking up all of the expertise and knowledge that the winemakers have accumulated over their tenures. And it's, as I say, the amount of artisanry and the amount of science and the amount of deep thought that goes into each and every single one of those wines is just all. And that's the story we need to tell, because it just really brings out a whole life of its own when you're sitting in that room with these guys.
You do have so much experience to draw from Elunda Basson at Steenberg, Pierre de Klerk, now cellar master at Graham Beck, Bubbles himself, and there'll be plenty more to learn. It's a learning process every single day in this space. Speaking of learning, is there anything in the 2 months that's really taken you aback, surprised you about the industry, something that you just didn't know and thought, well, that's something I wasn't expecting?
Yeah, I do think that there's a very different skill set from producing and making a wine to actually running a wine business. And I like to see myself, as I mentioned earlier, coming in as really sort of enabling the likes of Pierre and Peter and Elunda to really focus on creating the perfect wines, creating that quality and that story. And taking away the worry of running the business and the commercial angle and how we expand. And, that's not really a skill set that every winemaker or every cellar master has in their tool chest, right? So I do think there are a lot of wineries that, get the winemakers and the cellar masters and to be the commercial sort of face of the brand. And I think there's an opportunity there, rather than looking at consultants or looking at an external, to really focus on that as a separate skill set. And hopefully that's where I'm going to be adding a lot of value back into the Beck Family Estates business, bringing some of those efficiencies, some of those, best-in-class ways of working, looking cross-category, looking at what other people are doing in other spaces that we can steal with glee and really bring back into the wine category. So So yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that stood out for me is, and I think Marinda alluded to it too. There's a lot of data available, and there's a lot of knowledge within these businesses, but not necessarily the right skill sets to be able to unlock that knowledge and that data and really use it to help to drive the business forward. So hopefully that's where I add value. I'm not sure the rest will agree, but it's only 2 months, so it will come.
Off to a strong start. Keep up the tasting, and that'll help you in the right direction. I've got no doubt, Dave. You are 2 months in. There is somebody else who I don't think has actually started a new job yet. In as much as it is possible to replace you, Marinda, has somebody been appointed to take over yet?
Yes, we've had very good applications. We has appointed someone yet. We'll let the secret out quite soon because we'd like to introduce this person properly to the market. But as Dave also said, you need a special skill set. Winemakers don't necessarily have all the skill sets necessary for a commercial function, but this position do need some commercial skill set and winemaking skill set and an organizational skill set. So it is not that easy to have filled. We had very good candidates, fantastic ones, but we had to make a decision where we thought that somebody that has a little bit of everything and that can drive and can take Elgin Vintners from where it is now to the next level was very important for James Rawbone-Viljoen and Max Hahn, and of course myself, because I want to see this company just fly from here if possible, and not make everything undone what we've worked so hard for. So yes, we have.
All right. Well, as soon as we know on Dan Really Likes Wine, we'll be sure to pass on that information. I'm not sure if you've had this conversation yet or if you will still be having it, but I know one way or another it will happen. What will the thrust of your advice to your successor be, Marinda?
I think the thrust is that the devil is in the detail. I've seen that through all my life, is attention to detail. And luckily, winemakers are very detail-orientated people. And I think also just to take what's there, we've built a solid foundation, and also to make use of the knowledgeable people around surrounding in the company, and of course business leaders like Max Hahn and James Rawbone-Viljoen is also there to help. So I think it would just be hit the ground running. That would be my don't wait for anything, just go with it and just use every opportunity that you can to build this brand. There's no time to wait. It's a fierce competitive market out there. To strong the relationships that we have in the export market and in the local market, but specifically in the export market, needs nurturing, on a daily basis. And you have to just keep on doing that. You can never get tired of doing that. Because I always say there are 10 people waiting at the door to enter where you leave off. So you can't rest on your laurels. You need to hit the ground running.
Well, whoever that runner may be, just take into account 5 p.m. South African time is 8 a.m. American time. So wait until then before you WhatsApp Marinda with a desperate question to sort something out in the cellar. Dave, just as we look to wrap up the show, you're only 2 months in. It's very much early days, but you've clearly got a broad vision and you've got an extraordinary team around you to deliver upon that vision. If you and I were to sit down in a year's time, and hopefully we do, over a rather nice bottle of Brut Zero from Graham Beck or something out of Elunda's vintage selection, what is the conversation going to be around in terms of the success if things have gone the way you'd like to in that first year?
Yeah, I think it's about understanding the category, building SA wine both here in the local market and in the export market, and being able to command some of the price points that the wine warrants in particularly the UK and the US, really expanding into the premium space, and building a bit more of an equity play within both the Graham Beck and the Steenberg portfolio is definitely part of our ongoing strategy. Getting in front of those high-end consumers in those very on-target outlets, both in the on-trade and in some of the exclusive independent. If I was to look back, it would be that we've continued to build on the already very strong base that my predecessors have left. I really do feel the weight of all of them in every decision that I take. It is about building on the shoulders of giants, and people have made some really, really smart decisions. Chris du Toit, particularly as my predecessor, moving the Graham Beck brand to specialize in the bubble space was absolutely the right thing to do, and a very risky decision to take at the time. But then how do we build that reputation, tell that brand story, and premiumize our portfolio in a lot of these markets, and expand into some of those where there's still opportunities to go. So this is definitely the next stage in the business growth and development of Graham Beck and of Steenberg as brands. So hopefully we can sit down in a year's time and we can discuss all of the new markets we've opened up and all of the premium listings we've managed to gain, and how we've managed to get Cuvée Clive and the rest of the portfolio into some of those really premium outlets that need to build that brand halo.
And do so while reading a new article from Wine Spectator about a South African wine genius who's making waves in the Napa Valley with her brand new project. Marinda, Dave, thank you both so much for joining me on the show this evening. I think opportunity and challenge in equal measure is pretty much the story for both of you. Marinda, we're sorry to see you go. You're a national wine treasure, but I know you're going to be flying that South African flag so high in Napa, and I'm going to be over to visit because I'm hoping to be in Napa next year. So I'll come and annoy you in the new space and see how you're going. And Dave, you've got some terrific brands there. They're not just important in their own right, but they're really important as part of that broader South African story. And it looks like they're in good hands going forward. So to both of you, really appreciate you being on the show. Best of luck for both of your journeys. And hopefully not too far down the road, we'll catch up again and see how the Napa explosion and the Graham Beck empire are going. So both, thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Best of luck, Marinda.
Thank you.
So there we go. Dave Burford, the new CEO of Graham Beck, which includes Steenberg and Carina's, and Marinda Kruger saying goodbye to Elgin and hello the Napa Valley, and what sounds like a fantastic opportunity. And as genuinely sorry as I am to see her leave, because she's a wonderful talent and has been a huge part of the South African wine story. I think what she's going to do for South African wine as an export will be just as valuable. So that wraps us up for today. Normally, I would say I will see you on Thursday, but instead, I will see you tomorrow. Set your alarms, 2:30 until 3:30. The Tim Atkin Report 2022 is out. Tim is currently in Cape Town with the tasting of the 95-point and better scoring wines, as well as announcing his Winemaker of the Year, Wines of the Year, and his Legend of the Year. We'll get all of that information from Tim and find out how he fell in love with South Africa when we speak to him live from Strauss from 2:30 until 3:30 tomorrow. That does it for today then. Hope to see some of you on Thursday or Friday at Blind Ambition down in Cape Town and in Johannesburg, and possibly at that Bordeaux dinner with Roland Peents as well. For now, thanks for joining us. This has been Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay. See you back tomorrow. Goodbye. To join the Pick n Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.